Deep Dive Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Wolfson. Today, I'll be speaking with Alan Orwick. He's the co-founder of Quai Network. So excited for today's interview, and I also want to take the time to thank Quai Network for letting us use this beautiful podcasting space to film today's interview in. Here in Austin, Texas, one of my favorite cities, I'm truly thankful. So just giving a big shout out to Quai for letting us use the studio. It's just so great to be here. Also, before getting started with today's interview, I want to take the time to remind you guys to hit like and subscribe to the YouTube channel so you can stay up to date with all the content. I've got some great episodes coming and I don't want you guys to miss anything. So be sure to subscribe, like the content that you're seeing so we can stay in touch. Also, just want to let you guys know that today's interview is really exciting. We're going to be speaking all about Quai Network, what the network does, how the token is being mined, but we're also going to be speaking about the importance of crypto innovation in the United States and also about other Layer-1 networks like Bitcoin, Ethereum, the shortcomings there, and how Quai may actually be beneficial with those shortcomings. We're going to get into all of this and more, so stay tuned for the entire episode. Okay, without further ado, let's get started with today's interview. Hey, Alan, how's it going?
Doing well, Rachel. How are you?
Doing well. Thanks so much for joining me here at your studio, here at the Quai studio. Thank you for hosting me.
Yeah, thank you for coming in. It's definitely a good spot, and we've done a lot of podcasts here and interviews and educational content on all things we're doing for Quai. So the more the merrier here, and I'm glad that you were able to join us.
Yeah, thank you. And it's so good to be back in Austin.
Yes, the crypto scene here is always thriving, and definitely the more people that we can bring around to the office here, the better.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, before we get started, tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, how you got involved in the Web3 space, and then we can go into some additional questions.
Yeah, let's do it. So my background got started in crypto about 2015, 2016. I've been a programmer ever since I was little, pretty much always interested in computers, and the intrigue of engineering and all of the design around cryptocurrency was kind of what threw me into Bitcoin and Ethereum. And for the most part, I was a student, so just trying to understand how these systems work from an engineering side, and that led me to founding Texas Blockchain, where I was the undergraduate founding president of that, led that for 2 years, grew that to over 200 students, and helped shape curriculum here in Austin on campus and off campus. So other activities that I've done have been with ATX DAO. I've also previously spent time at Apple as a software engineer, and for the past 3 years, we've been working on Quai Network. So taking all of the research we did at UT into something that is productionalized and rolled out for a hopefully what we see as world-changing technology in ways that we can create a blockchain that scales for global commerce in a way that is differentiated from everything else. So in the midst of doing that right now, and we're kind of at ahead of all of the years of hard work to get to this point. So this is a really good time for this podcast to cover all of the things that we've done, and I'm looking forward to diving in more.
Yeah, well, that's wonderful. And we met, just to go back a little bit for our listeners, we met years ago. I think you were heading up the Texas blockchain thing at UT Austin, where I think we both did our undergrad there.
Yeah.
And so that's how we know each other. And it's so incredible to see how you've evolved coming from that to just like sticking with the crypto and blockchain space. Although you did mention that you were a software engineer at Apple. That's interesting. So how is that?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of a trade-off whenever after 2018, crypto kind of went away and everyone was like, well, what is all this stuff with enterprise blockchains and all of these use cases like putting supply chain on blockchain? And it really wasn't the same ethos or the same approach that people that in crypto for a long time were familiar with, and then also the markets were just down. So coming out of my undergrad, I was like, okay, well, I'll get a big boy job and I'll go do something that's more traditional. And I've always kind of been a fan, like I said, of tech as a whole, and Apple was a great company. So was able to do that here in Austin and actually get some large company experience under me before taking the leap and jumping into being an entrepreneur full time. And that definitely gave me a good toolkit to go and actually explore how companies operate at scale. You know, you're working with so many more people than you are in a startup and actually having to facilitate different kinds of interactions every day. And I think that was a really worthwhile learning experience, but also it just didn't give me the same fulfillment that is to, take the risk and get into something that you have to have more ownership of and control over. And building in crypto too is just such a unique approach to software and everything that's open source compared to something that is more closed source and more business related.
Right. Yeah, definitely. And then before we get into the questions, it's called Quai. Can
Yep.
you explain the name? Is it French or?
Yeah, so there's a few ways of looking at the word quai. So quai, whenever we originally thought of it, is actually sort of like the word buck in Mandarin, so meaning almost like a currency. And so if you want to buy something 5 quai, that would be like $5 in Mandarin in terms of how it's said. It's also platform in French. So if you look at where you go travel in France or even in places that speak French in Switzerland, if there is a sort of part of a dock by a bay, it'll sort of say quai. And so for us, we kind of view that as like a money platform, which is similarly to like what a blockchain is.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Okay, now let's get into the
Let's
questions.
do it.
What is Quai Network?
Yeah. So Quai Network is a horizontally scalable and high throughput blockchain that is proof of work based. So the core innovation is finding a way to scale proof of work and almost putting away the connotation that proof of work should be slow. And if we look at like Bitcoin, for example, Bitcoin is the most decentralized, most robust cryptocurrency and blockchain network. But it's hard to use and no one really actually consumes Bitcoin on a day-to-day basis. They just sort of hold it in a savings or they invest in it every so often. But with Quai, we're looking to sort of break down that idea and make sure that people can use crypto every day and use it in a productive manner for things like payments and having a way in which that consumers can actually adopt cryptocurrency as a whole, as opposed to sort of niche speculative use cases.
Okay, got it. So Quai is a layer 1 blockchain.
Yep.
And so what exactly makes it different from other layer 1s? I mean, we've
Yeah.
got so many different layer 1s out there. So what is special about Quai?
Yeah, there's a lot from the technology side. So I'd say that's really where we started. And it's been 6 years plus in the making to get to this point. And the core breakthrough was taking a proof of work blockchain and breaking it up into shards. And sharding has been a way of scaling blockchain for some time. It's more historically been done in the proof of stake world. So some of the first blockchains that have done sharding are ones like Multiverse X, Polkadot, Near, and others that are proof of stake blockchains that have some level of sharding. But no one's really done it in a proof of work blockchain. So our core innovation is applying this methodology for having shards, increasing the throughput of a blockchain. So again, making proof of work fast and making it really easy to use and as cheap and as low fee as some of those newer blockchains like Near and Polkadot and Solana and others. And from that standpoint, we can compete with some of the newer proof of stake chains there. What makes us different is that we've also continued to push forward on the decentralization aspect. So finding a unique blend between having something that can scale, but also is as global and as robust as Bitcoin and its properties with proof of work. So we have essentially a few concepts in Quai Network that establish differentiation on that side. The first is being work shares. So you can have a sort of lower threshold to pay out, so miners can more frequently get paid versus in Bitcoin when it's every block for 10 minutes, then you have to sort of attribute your hash rate to a mining pool, and that mining pool can then further centralize Bitcoin. And so there are several attempts to decentralize Bitcoin more so. One of those is Stratum v2. So if you take what Stratum v2 is doing for Bitcoin, we sort of natively do that in Quai, which we're excited about. And on top of that, there's sort of a laundry list of other differentiation from a tech side that promotes decentralization and proof of work. NePo is one of those, so trustless RPC access, and then even more light client relay layers for data transport. So all of these different features, and I'm not even covering everything within Quai, but I think we try to stand alone in terms of technology, and then we also have an activated community and people that are more ardent believers in some of the original crypto ethos and where we should be heading with crypto versus, again, like I said, this world in which people are seeing more meme coins and more of these things that are more gambling versus like, hey, like I thought crypto was going to go change the world and accomplish all these things and take down the banks and reinvent how we do finance. So getting to a point where we can sort of blend the two of those together and create a product that is built to sort of withstand the test of time.
So what is the goal behind the network? Is it money oriented or just to make the transfer of money or cryptocurrency more like easier, I
Yeah.
guess? Or what is the goal behind the network?
Yeah, we want to be an electronic cash system.
Okay.
So having a way that people can facilitate value transfers on a blockchain that don't require any intermediaries. And I think if you were to look at what some of the early crypto pioneers and people that wanted to accomplish a similar vision of, there's just several ways that fell short. And we got to the point where we're still using Visa, we're still using MasterCard, we're still using all of our centralized payment systems that we're sort of dependent on, and that can essentially cause downstream problems such as debanking, as we saw with Operation Chokepoint 2.0, and as we saw with even more requirements that people in third world places or places with broken down financial infrastructure can't access their money or can't access their banks. And so I think with Quai, what we're looking to do is continue to push innovation forward to where we can focus on actually building that robust global monetary system that is truly decentralized and truly accessible for anyone that wants to access it.
Okay, got it. So is there a token associated with
Yep.
Quai? What is the token and how does it work?
Yeah, so the Quai token is the base layer token that facilitates transactions. So similar to Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, it is the network asset that is essentially able to be mined. So you can plug in a GPU miner and mine the token and receive the block reward fees, again, like a standard proof of work network. And you can transact in it to essentially do things like smart contract interactions or to, again, accomplish that use case of payments. There's also an additional token on the network called Qi or QI, and Qi is emitted proportionally to hash rate, creating what is essentially an energy dollar in the system. So it is a flat coin that is tied to the price of electricity, since when you have a proof of work miner, they are using electricity to run that computation. And so by linking the emission of that token to that computation, we're creating what is essentially a Oracle-less flat coin.
Explain how that works.
Yeah.
Just like give me a real world use case scenario of how that energy token works.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll kind of start with more history. And so I want to give context that thermoeconomics is kind of the area that we've wanted to focus on with this concept of an energy dollar, because anytime stablecoins are on a blockchain, they are inherently centralizing because you are hypothecating an asset that is not native to the blockchain. USDC exists in a bank. Tether exists in a bank. And decentralized stablecoins that are like DAI are essentially CDPs that create also extent risk to the native asset itself, which is partially why ETH, whenever it went from $4,000 to I think $600 during the last all-time high in bear market, it was part of the CDP unwindings of the ETH as collateral. So to look at how current stability is represented on chain, it creates a lot of risks to the native assets. And so we looked at it and we said, how can we create a native asset that has some semblance of stability? And what is stability? So traditional thermoeconomics would say that stability is energy, because within the economy, energy is the life, is the blood, right? It is the thing that runs everything. To get this mic, to get my jacket, to get this table, it needed to take some amount of kilowatts to create. And so if we could price production in kilowatts, then that's actually a good monetary baseline. And that's a good means of accomplishing relative pricing across a society. And of course, that doesn't factor in as much in terms of social capital and what it means to have sort of different people accomplish different types of tasks. But from a physics standpoint, we'll start with energy as like the monetary system. And again, long-winded to get to this point, but to say what it means practically, it means that we have a crypto native asset that has some semblance of stability without any external real-world dependencies besides what is known by the nodes in the blockchain themselves. So the nodes can look at the energy expenditure and they can say, here's what I think of that in terms of how I view it as a computer and how I view it as a node. And that has, again, a way of transferring to everyone in the network, because energy is fundamentally understandable by everyone anywhere at any place. A kilowatt is a kilowatt here in Germany, in Australia, in England. It's the same unit of sort of measurement. So we see that as a good form of stability, and we see it as a way of creating stability without having it tied to a dollar or without being tied to fiat. And so, again, that stability is sort of relative because it's done by miners and it's done as a proxy based off of GPU compute. So it's not perfectly stable, which is why I say sort of flat coin and why I say relatively stable or stablecoin alternative, because it's not precisely a dollar. It's meant to fluctuate, but at the same time, over the long period, it's meant to track electricity.
So the miners that are mining the network's token are receiving this energy dollar in return for their efforts.
Yep. And so that is how that structure is created, is they have the option to mine either Quai or Qi. Quai is the store value like asset. Again, when you think of a monetary system, you want it to have three properties. You want it to have a store of value, you want it to have a medium of exchange, and you want it to have a unit of account. So in this scenario, the Quai token is like the store of value asset. It is the, if you look back in terms of research, Robert Sam's senior shares paper in 2012 was actually some of the precursor to a lot of the stablecoin work we have now. And you sort of describe, in that case, a volatile coin, that's the store of value. And in this case, the Qi asset is the unit of account, or more of that stability coin that is tied to electricity. And then the network itself is the medium of exchange. So you kind of have those three pieces packaged into one.
Got it. Okay. So how is the network being used today? And let's start off with, so the mainnet launch happened at the end of January?
Yep, that was on the 4th.
Okay.
No, 29th was the start. And then we had the Genesis block go the 4th of February.
So let's talk about what that means, and then we can talk about use cases.
Sure. So we're in the process of launching a Layer-1, and it's built from the ground up, basically. So we've done everything we can to rethink from first principles every single little architecture decision to make sure that we have long-term success with the network. And we don't want to just essentially throw something up and hope it works. So we've been very particular, and we've been very precise on the rollout structure. So on the 29th, we started our dress rehearsal with the nodes, making sure all of those would work as intended. And that went well. And that allowed us to move to the next step, which was etching the Genesis block on the 4th. So on the 4th of February, all of the miners came online. So similar to any other network's Genesis, where you sort of create the economic infrastructure, you create the rules of the game, and then everyone else starts to participate and play, or in this case, mine, then that is the sort of long-term network or sort of mainnet launch. And for that, we've seen right now, I think 120,000 GPUs come online since the 4th. That equates to roughly 3 terahash of miners and hash rate coming online. That puts us, I believe, into the top 10 of proof of work cryptocurrencies, which is great. And on the 19th, we're expecting the token to be transferable and freely available for people to come into the ecosystem and participate. So that phased rollout is sort of our attempt of making sure that nothing major blows up in our face as we're kind of in the midst of distributing tokens and making sure all of the allocations get fulfilled, and then also working with other partners to make sure integrations go smoothly.
Okay. So are there any use cases that have actually launched that are using the network today in the real world? And if so, can you explain those use cases?
There's a good bit. So, for us, we see Quai really as the everything chain. We want it to be the most robust chain that's available to everyone at sort of every time, or, every place that people want to plug into a decentralized system and use it as money. So to start, there's no use case that we'd want to shy away from. And we see actively, 60 plus people deploying apps in terms of projects on testnet. Some of the ones that we've worked with are like Portal to Bitcoin, which is one of our close partners. IONET is doing decentralized compute on Quai. We have QuaiMark, which is a Quai NFT exchange that people can go buy and sell NFTs on. We have Quai Swap and Ice Cream Swap, which are dexes for buying and selling Quai tokens on Quai. So ERC or QRC20s on Quai that are deployed with Solidity code. We also have other applications in terms of Lithium, which is an up-and-coming DeFi yield strategy with locked mining tokens on Quai. The list kind of goes on and on and on, but I'm definitely excited about all categories of people that are building applications, and it kind of can range between, like I said, emerging use cases in the form of DePIN to existing ones that have been done in other ecosystems like DeFi and NFTs.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Do you view Quai as a competitor to like Bitcoin or Ethereum, or do you view it as something where like all of these Layer-1s can kind of work together?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately right now where we are in the market, I think a rising tide lifts all boats in terms of Bitcoin succeeding. And I would hate to say we're anti-Bitcoin or we're anti-Ethereum, because we want all of crypto to succeed. And I think a world in which, we're not at the stage where we launch Quai and then like the rest of crypto is done. Like everything just goes to Quai, and like that isn't practical or realistic. So I think, we do see ourselves as a competitor. We see ourselves as an alternative. It is, a emerging cryptocurrency and an emerging blockchain network that has made trade-offs and design principles that we hope people would resonate with and want to deploy their application or interact with the network in a certain way for a longer period of time, and ideally create more robust mechanisms that other blockchains have failed to do. And I think ultimately we want to be supplemental to a lot of these. We want to have it be, a mix of everything, but at the end of the day, they are still competitive, and they are still something that we want to take mind share and market share away from. And we've specifically designed Quai with their shortcomings in mind. So that's kind of where we've looked at it.
Can you talk about the shortcomings that you're thinking of when it
Yeah.
comes to like the Bitcoin network or Ethereum? Like, what are those shortcomings and I know you touched on it a little bit in the beginning, but let's talk about it again.
Yeah. I mean, I think for Bitcoin, right, it was the first one launched. So it's had the first mover advantage. And in all of its shortcomings, people are like, it's the first, it's the most decentralized, and Satoshi's nowhere to be found. So we're going to have the trust and faith that Bitcoin will remain as is. And I think that's a huge benefit to Bitcoin, that it sort of removed a lot of the key dependencies that impact its economic policy, so that people know that halvings will remain as consistent as they have been for the future. And at the same time, I think when you bring up halvings and the lack of innovation on Bitcoin, that's also a negative, because it's still kind of a last mover for some of the newer chains to come in and say, we're going to do things like smart contracts. We're going to have new ways of interacting with the network with new dApps. And so for Bitcoin, it's tried to make things like ordinals and runes and fungibility work, but none of those have taken off. And so a lot of the volume and a lot of the actual trading activity happens on things like Solana, and that's not happening on Bitcoin. And so the diehard Bitcoiners will say, that's great, don't pollute our chain. But at the same time, that's still fees that could have gone to Bitcoin miners to subsidize the actual decentralization and security of the network. And so then over the long term, if you look at Bitcoin and you don't have those fees, you have to wonder what it takes to pay for the security of the blockchain network. And so for Bitcoin, and come 2140, the block subsidy is going to go to zero. So who's going to operate Bitcoin? Is it going to be stewards of the network that do it for free? What is the cost of that? And by then, how does that network continue to sustain itself? But I still think there's challenges even before then that would impact Bitcoin in that similar security way. So again, kind of fungibility and security aside, Bitcoin's still the number one asset. It's still half the market, and it's going to go nowhere. So for the time being, it's a benefit that Bitcoin continues to do well. For Ethereum, on the other hand, it hasn't performed as well. And if you look at everything since the merge, when Ethereum went from proof of work to proof of stake, it's been pretty much down only against Bitcoin for its price. And now you still have Bitcoin around, I think, 97K. It topped out at 108. Ethereum's kind of range bound, and it's almost like its own stable coin around $2,500 to $3,200. So the price performance and the concerns around Ethereum's development long term have opened up a can of worms, because now they've all opinions on the construction and ownership of Ethereum aside, they haven't been able to innovate at their core base layer, and they've offloaded a lot of their own execution to these layer 2s, which have been parasitic to Ethereum's own success. So I think finding a way to navigate just the, again, economic and core innovations that bring value to these networks is something that we've looked at fundamentally, and we say, well, we have to try to find ways to make sure we don't end up like these systems. And we've looked at that from their side.
Yeah. You've said a lot of interesting things that maybe we could even follow up on,
Yeah.
like the parasitic L2s.
Yep.
Some people may agree with you and some people may disagree and think, L2s are needed. But yeah, I mean, we can talk more about that with another.
Well, I think they are needed. And because, like I said, the base layer Ethereum can't process the scale.
Right.
I mean, did a lot of stuff during DeFi summer and all of the NFT craze, and you're paying $600 on base layer Ethereum for an NFT drop. Like, that's not feasible. And it was great for the people that were operating Ethereum at the time to get those fees, but no one wanted to pay that if you were a user for forever. And so the execution went to things like Base or other sorts of layer 2s, Optimism, Arbitrum, but Ethereum never got that benefit. And so I think that's a big question right now, is how does Ethereum continue to get the benefit of layer 2s taking those fees?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Yeah, we should explore that. So I went on to my X account and I said that I'm interviewing you, and some people asked a few questions that they wanted me to ask you.
Great.
So one of those questions was, how is Quai, I always want to say Quai.
Yeah.
How is Quai bridging the gap between traditional finance and the blockchain or the world of Web3? Because I think you've talked a lot about like Web3 use cases and DeFi and all of these things. But when it comes to traditional finance, how is the network bridging that gap?
Yeah. So our core thesis and the thing with everything we're doing is energy. So finding a way to bring energy centerfold and having that be the key driver of value in this blockchain system. And if you look at energy, it's a form of currency, like I mentioned. It's also a form of a commodity because it's orchestrating all of the different types of interaction in our normal day-to-day life. So I see ways that with Quai, we can pair nicely with the traditional finance system that can essentially bring in things like RWAs, tokenize different types of assets, pair that with tradable means of electricity and energy in the form of Qi as an energy dollar, and then also continue to make sure that we can accelerate traditional payment use cases and even alleviate where they have friction. So if we can go in and help people do things like remittances, do things like cross-border payments, and then even more sort of microtransactions or more frequent interactions for how they spend funds, then that's a huge win on our side. And I think that alleviates a lot of TradFi. And then in terms of the cycle, I still think this cycle is pretty institutional heavy. So finding ways to work with institutional players, tokenize different things, stocks, bonds, real estate, and have that as a means of using the blockchain.
When was the network established? Or when did you start working on it and start building it?
So, Dr. K came up with it as a main research idea back in 2017, 2018. We had a National Science Foundation grant, and it was a SBIR phase 1 that allowed us to work on it as a research idea. And then really it's existed since then from 2018 to now. And the key launch was on the 4th. So it's running, and all of the things that we've built to this date are all in one sort of system. We've done everything from the explorers to the wallets to the RPCs to the different types of apps. We've brought in an ecosystem. We've built a community. We've found, ways to sort of outcompete and innovate in a very noisy space. So I think right now it's a matter of continuing to deliver on our promises and find ways to create more interesting use cases like the ones that you mentioned. For people are asking, why should we use this additional layer 1? Well, we should find things that other cryptos haven't been able to do yet and fulfill that on our chain.
Yeah. It's also interesting because Quai has a great community behind the network. I mean, obviously on social media, we got a ton of responses when I posted that I'm interviewing you.
Mm-hmm.
So was it difficult to build that community, or do you think that the people that are part of the community just saw the same problems you saw and were like, this just makes sense?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's been 3 years since we got our initial funding and really put Quai into something that we wanted to build. Before then, it was more research and ethereal and academic. So getting it to the point where we could bring people in and tell them what we wanted to build, I think people saw that and they're like, that makes sense. So I want to also follow along on this idea, and I can view a blockchain being built in this way, and this is something that I want to use. So I think ultimately, if you look at community, it's one of the key products of a blockchain because it's the people that will go and use the systems, and they will build applications, they will become developers, they will become your evangelists, and they will ensure that, kind of like Bitcoin in the early days, that it's going to remain a thing and that people will continue to try to push this way of technology forward in terms of crypto. So I think right now in terms of the market, crypto communities and different types of tokens and communities are changing very quickly. I mean, you look at all the different coins that are very short-lived. I think all of the people that have been affiliated and have looked at Quai's growth, they've been around for 3 years. And they've just seen us continue to put together new content, new information. We've done 4 test nets that we've continued to have people take part in. So we've done different types of incentivization with the token. So a lot of people do come just for an airdrop to take part in different types of campaigns and tasks and bounties, but other people actually say, hey, I want to test this and help grow the network. So we have a pretty close and tight-knit group of people that are excited to support the network for a long time, starting now and with mainnet launch and everything that we're doing into hopefully a pretty long time.
So if somebody wanted to mine the token, how do they do that? Is just they set it up at home? I mean, I'm assuming it's not like these Bitcoin miners with these big facilities out here in Texas mining Bitcoin. So it's just like a home setup where you just set up some GPUs and start mining the token.
Yep. And that's the key goal. So we want it to be, like I said, as decentralized as possible. And that means that we have to have a pretty low barrier to entry. So having something that's just like a GPU that's in your gaming desktop that you can turn on and mine the token and take part in the network. So really a network that really anyone can plug into with very little cost associated. And sure, some people may have larger setups and have built out something that has hundreds of GPUs, but the goal would be that a guy with 1 GPU can kind of on a pro rata basis compete with the guy with 300 GPUs. So it's the key thing of having, again, that low barrier to entry, and then also, yes, just plugging it in, downloading the software. In terms of what you need, I think you need about 16 gigabytes of RAM and about 500 gigabytes of storage to run it on your desktop. I recommend desktop just because it has more consistent internet connection, but there are some people that do it on laptops. And then, yeah, just a GPU. And there is no big like warehouse facility running Quai Network. It's mostly just kind of at-home hobbyists and kind of over time, building out more and more people running it.
Okay. Now, this may be a silly question. Is the token listed on any exchanges, or
It
is
is
it
not at the moment. No, it's just
okay?
because transactions aren't live on the network.
Okay.
It is pre-TGE, as we're calling it. But in reality, we've kind of conflated TGE because the tokens are technically generated. They just aren't trading live yet on the network, but that will be on the 19th. So you like I said, you caught me at a good time because we're kind of post mainnet launch, pre-token, and trying to coordinate all of the stakeholders and key parties across what we're doing for that event. But that will be coming soon.
Cool. I'm
Yep.
excited. Let's switch gears a little bit. What are your thoughts on the way crypto is shaping up in the United States right now under
Mhm.
the new Trump administration? We're seeing a lot of these crypto-friendly regulations. Is that impacting Quai, Quai at all? What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, hopefully, right? I think the administration has been positive for crypto. I think, people were a little shocked whenever you look at things like Trump's meme coin. So I think a lot of it is like, where are we in the stance of crypto actually benefiting from this? Or is it more so a grift and a concern that people view crypto as a casino and just want to gamble? So for us, again, I think that's a big question. It's like, are we going to get the headway that we need to ensure that we can go and actually take on things like traditional finance and remove a lot of the friction in our economic layer? Or are we going to just have crypto be viewed as this thing that people compete PvP in, that is going to be meme coins and gambling for the rest of eternity? So I think there is, again, a little bit of depression, especially right now in the market. We're off those highs that we came into with Trump coming fresh into office. And we're sort of reevaluating what crypto looks like for the long term. I think in terms of being a builder in the US, I'm extremely optimistic, in which you have more regulation coming in that makes it easier. And the administration as a whole has said they're not going to prosecute crypto devs. They want crypto to be the sort of main thing in America. They want America to be the crypto capital of the world, and all of that different sentiment. David Sachs is also the crypto czar with AI now, and having that sort of brief sort of thinking of the sort of PTSD that we've seen with prior administrations is kind of refreshing. But again, I think a lot of it's being thrown at the wall at once, and people are trying to all get their sort of wishes in, and they're trying to get their piece of what the administration is going to do in the near future. So I think we'll see what it looks like. I still hope that a lot of the original ethos of what crypto is meant to do prevails versus people just trying to push their own narrative. Again, as a L1 founder, of course, I'm trying to make sure Quai is successful as well and can find a way to be built in America in a secure and long-term oriented way. But yeah, I mean, at the same time, it's been a very hectic month of everything coming in, and I was definitely pretty shocked with regards to the meme coins and all of the different ways that people have viewed crypto. So hopefully we get more regulation just around making sure that crypto is developed in the correct way. We have the right administrations that can kind of come in and help entrepreneurs build. But overall, still very optimistic.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And just out of curiosity, going back to Quai and the network and how the token is mined, is that only being mined by people in the United States, or
Nope.
Oh, so it's just
Global. Yeah.
global.
So it's a
Okay.
fully accessible, decentralized network. It's free open source software. You can just
Got it.
download it and run it on your node or on your computer at any
Okay.
point with just an internet connection.
Wonderful.
Mhm.
Great. Well, I know we're running low on time, so let's kind of wrap things up a little bit.
Sure.
Alan, what do you hope to see for Quai Network next and just moving forward in general with the crypto space?
Yeah, great question. So with Quai, we want to continue to build, and I think we have a lot of products on the roadmap that we haven't even been able to get to yet. We've been working on the core technological infrastructure of building the Layer-1, but I think as we get to market, moving into things like the ecosystem and having other applications and people build on Quai is a huge priority of ours, bringing in people from other ecosystems, showing them what we've built, and then rolling out new types of applications such as mobile first payments, Venmo-like alternatives, and having things that people can use crypto every day for. So that's our key priority. And then outside of that, just continuing to build the network and bring on more miners, bring on more hash rate, further things for decentralization and how people can use Quai.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, I'm really excited. I think it would be really cool to see these payment use cases pan
Yep.
out where I guess the Quai token would be used in like a Venmo type setting.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. That's what we're working on right now and hoping to get that rolled out in the upcoming months. I mean, if anything, pretty soon here.
Cool.
Yep.
Wonderful. Well, Alan, if our listeners want to get in touch with you or if they want to be a miner with the network, how would they do that?
Yeah. So my handle is OXAlanK on X. And in terms of our YouTube, as we were talking about it earlier, we have a ton of content just on the network. So I encourage people to go and study Quai, go read everything that we've built. If you want to run a node, our docs at q.ai/docs have ways that you can download all the software, plug in your GPU. We have mining pools available for people that don't actually want to run their own node as well, although I do encourage people to run their own nodes. We have other types of GPU installations that are more efficient than others that other people have built. I won't endorse any specific third party, but there are different types of options for GPUs. So we have an emerging ecosystem of builders there. And then we do have sort of developer bounties and grants available for people that want to build applications. So if you're a developer and you know how to code, come and deploy an app.
Wonderful. And will you be at ETH Denver?
I will be.
Coming up. So
yes. So the team will be there. I think we're going to have like a giant LED screen with a big display on it. So hopefully we don't blind too many people, but we'll see what that looks like.
Cool. Well, cool. I'm excited. Maybe I'll join ETH Denver. We'll see.
Yeah. We'll have the token up and running then. So maybe we'll do a follow-up.
Cool. I would love to.
Awesome. Thank you, Rachel.
Awesome. Thanks, Alan. Special thanks to 4Labs Digital for producing Web3 Deep Dive podcast. I'd also like to thank the sponsors behind Web3 Deep Dive. You can click the links in the show notes to learn more about each of the Web3 initiatives from these sponsors. Finally, thanks to the listeners for tuning in. Please be sure to subscribe, like, and share.